So, welcome, Tiff.
Hello, Karen. How are you?
I am fantastic. You're the first boxer that I've ever had on my podcast.
Oh, well, this is exciting. Do you want to go a few rounds?
No,
About time you got off that bench, isn't it, Karen?
get out of my corner and give it a swing.
Yes.
I haven't been punching lately. I used to when I was younger, when I was in the band, and people would come up and spill beer all over my foot pedals, and I'd be like, by Jesus, and I'd jump down and punch them in the face. And for anybody listening who's shocked by that, that's actually the truth.
Well, maybe I second guess that, or maybe I won't invite you to get off the bench and do a few rounds with me. You might just come out on top.
I'm a tough little nugget, I can tell you, but I try not to punch anybody anymore. But, I've got to tell you though, dog abusers, and the dog fighters and that, by Jesus, give me a round with them, and I tell you, I'd find some lion strength that I didn't even know I had. But
I love it. It was my dog's birthday yesterday. I've got a little whippet, Coach the Whippet.
Yeah. What's its name?
Coach. Her. It's a she. Sounds like a boy though, with a name like Coach. But I was like, I'm going to get a whippet, and I'm going to call her Coach.
I love whippets. I had a friend with a whippet, and every time I'd go around there, he used to jump on my back and don't. This is not a sexual thing. He was not trying to hump me, but he would constantly bite my neck and give me love bites on my neck the whole time. He was obsessed with me.
Oh, they are the best. They are the best. Probably not, for a boxer, probably not the typical dog breed that you would think that a boxer would be walking around with. But hey,
but doesn't matter.
No.
It doesn't matter. And dogs are our best mates. They truly are. So yes, give me a dog abuser, give me a boxing ring, and I reckon I might just bloody win. But
I love it.
So speaking of boxing, I mean, I'm fascinated by this because really, like, as much as I laugh about my past and as much as I laugh about, taking out an asshole, the whole point about being in a ring and getting punched in the face, it's not really, most people don't go, you know what, I truly want to be punched in the face like that. Let's go for it. But I want to get to that in a minute. I want to see how the hell you got there. So right now you're a boxer, a trainer, epigenetics coach, which I want to also talk about. You're the host of the podcast Roll with the Punches, so there's a lot of good stuff going on for you. And, you really found your feet and you're really cracking away with it. It's fantastic. You've gotten off the bench essentially. But prior to that, it didn't start there. So give us some background about what you were doing first and how you got into this game.
Oh, it definitely didn't start there. And it's funny because when I hear people kind of starting to summarise, I realise how many chapters and how many times I've gotten off the bench.
Yeah.
And I feel like when we're in this space, it's almost, we think it's a one-time thing, like get off the bench and that's it. Yeah. But once you get off the bench, you're on a new bench.
Yep.
And sometimes you got to get off that bench again. And that's kind of what happened to me. So I was working in the print industry for the majority of my working life. I grew up in Tassie, so I was a Tassie girl. And I think I was maybe 19 when I moved to Melbourne. It's 38 now. So we've racked up nearly 20 years, which has flown. And at 29... I went to a talk on resilience, and it was held upstairs above a boxing gym at the Personal Training Academy headquarters. Yeah. And after that, I went downstairs and we had a look at this boxing gym, and there was a poster on the wall that said 12 weeks, 0 to hero, executive fight club, dudes in suits, boxing gloves. And I looked at that and I was like, can chicks do that? That was my entry level. I remember before that, going to the local PCYC with my flailing pink Everlast pale pink gloves, flailing around and thinking deep down, if I just hit the bag, the trainer will come over, and like I just yearning for them to say, hey, you should fight. I thought if I've got what it takes, then someone will tell me, because they'll know I won't. Like, you don't just do things. Someone will tell me, and then I'll have permission to maybe learn how to fight. But I never in the world would have actually raised that as a thing. So that poster was like a little, like sneaking through the back door. I was like, oh, you can be shit and do it anyway. Like, I don't have to be good to do this. This is for people that work in offices, and that's me. So I did this 12-week challenge. And as you can imagine, I told everyone, because it was a real, I think for me, it was a real, I liked to do things to show that I was different. I liked to do things to match this persona that I'd built that I didn't realize was a persona, and we'll get to that. But so for me, it was just another, Tiff's going to be a fighter. Tiff's doing this. So I told everyone, come watch this thing. You're going to fly $250. You're going to come and watch me do this fight. It'll be a professional fight. It's going to be on Foxtel. It was huge. And I remember getting a couple of weeks into training, and Karen, we had to start learning the defense. So where you block a punch, you put your gloves on your head, and so we're standing in front of our partner, and we're not throwing punches. We're just mimicking the moves to learn the movements. And I remember this knot in my throat, and not having the ability to keep my eyes open or and it wasn't even a punch yet. And the feeling of discomfort and fear, and I just thought, I've told hundreds of people. Like, I've told everyone. There's no way out of this. And now I can't even keep my eyes open. Like, what am I going to do? Wow. And that really set the tone for that 12 weeks. Like, that set the tone of just doing stuff that I felt completely out of depth with, going in every day, training, getting punched in the face, knowing I was the worst in the gym, feeling hideous, but doing it anyway. And I remember the day before the fight, I had to pick Mum up from the airport. I'd have 1 hour sleep because I had a panic attack. Well, not a literal panic attack, but I got anxiety the night before, and I'd never felt anything like that in my life. And I was just wide saucer eyes all night, staring at the ceiling going, this is kind of important that I sleep tonight. And I got to sleep at about 6 a.m. and then I had to get up at 7 to go pick my mum up from the airport. And she had to deal with my inability to communicate all day because I was in this heightened state of arousal and awareness and anxiety. And I remember saying, I will never, ever, ever do anything like this again, because nothing is worth the way that I have felt in this 24-hour period. Nothing. There is nothing in my imagination that could ever be worth that. And I remember after the fight was 10 times that feeling on the flip side. I was like, when are we doing this again? And that moment and that story and that experience was just the basis of so many massive pivotal changes to me, some that I realized and some that I didn't, some that just filtered out into life and changed me while I was busy focusing on this fun little thing and focusing on the things that I did see, but also all of the other stuff, behind the scenes, just incredible. And so I continued on with that, did a few fights, so they were corporate fights, and I did 3 of those, and then I fought in the amateurs, and I won for my first amateur fight. Terrified, as you can imagine, because now I'm going into the real arena, and the people I'm 20, or by that stage I was 30, maybe even 31, and I'm fighting young girls that have been fighting in boxing gyms, not corporate boxing gyms and fun things. Like, they've been training to fight, and their footwork was impeccable. I remember watching them; their footwork was impeccable, and their speed was impeccable, and I was just like, oh my goodness, these people are real fighters. I can't do this. And yet my first fight, I won the novice Victorian title, and just crazy to me, but what an amazing mind shifting moment.
Yeah. And it really, the only antidote to fear is action. And you proved that, by, I'm bloody terrifying. What am I doing here? I have so much self-doubt. But the fact that you took action, and I say this to people, when you're shitting your pants, take action, because, so what? It might not work, and you might end up exactly where you were. But what if it does work, which it usually does? Yeah. And then you're kind of like, you've got this thing that happens. And when you were talking about, while you're focusing, all that other stuff was happening in the background, this is the ripple effect of, you also talked about changing your persona. And when we build this identity, that we're so focused on what we want to do and not focused on what we don't want to do, the ripple effect that goes out, and starts to impact everything about building our persona, building our identity, it all happens like that. And it comes down to that one simple decision to take action. You know, no matter how much it scares you. I freaking love that. I love that story. And one thing I want to ask of you, you said in there, maybe they'll come over and they'll see me in my pink Everlast gloves and they'll say, you can fight. Now, when people think about fight, you know, and we all do because we've been brought up watching TV ringside and all that sort of rubbish, you know, and when we think about fight, the word fight conjures up in our head. I want to hurt somebody. Do you know, I want to fight to hurt somebody. But from where you're coming from, that's not what you're thinking. You know, you tell us what fight means to you for your inner strength and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, I like that. I've never been asked that. And that's interesting. And it was a really interesting process because when I stepped into the fighting and into the fight, it definitely wasn't aggression driven. And I remember at times through the process thinking, like, I'm a Taurus, and so I've got a temper when I need one.
And stubborn.
When I don't. And I'm stubborn. And sometimes, you know, when you get so pissed at something and you're wild and you're angry and you think, I am so powerful right now that I could throw a house across the road. Like, you feel so strong. And I remember at times thinking, if I could get this angry in the boxing ring, I would flatten somebody with one punch. Like, that's how strong you feel when you've got that anger. But inside that boxing ring, inside that space, there was a completely different thing going on with me. And I've unpacked that a lot as the journey went on and as I discovered myself. But there was no access to anger or emotion, or there was a whole nother thing going on. And when we talk about that building of a persona, look, I encourage everyone to do two things. One thing is find something that you can that makes you want to step out of the comfort zone. Something that terrifies you, that you're willing to. You've got to find that thing because that boxing thing it was a blessing to me, because in my life, the amount of times where I've come up against a feeling or a thing or an experience and I've gone back to that metaphor, I call it my metaphor, the metaphor of the boxing ring, I go, that's just the same here. Yeah. I remember starting an improv class late last year, and I did it while we're in lockdown. We did this online improv, and because I had a guest on my show talking about improv, I never knew what that was. I was like, that's make believe. And I went to the first session with a bunch of friends, and I had a ball. Like, we laughed. I was like, this is really fun, and I see some value in this for me. I see some metaphoric value underneath what we're actually doing for me personally. So I'm going to do this. So I go and book a class, and then I think I did another online one first before I went in, because we were still in lockdown, of course. Yay for us. I remember going to the first class, and I was by myself, and I wasn't in the most vibrant mood when I had to go, and so it felt completely uncomfortable. And I was like, what am I doing this for? I don't want to do this, blah, blah, blah. And I had to sit myself in the corner and have the little chat to myself again of like, what was the purpose of this? Of course it's going to feel like this at the start. What did boxing feel like most of the times? Most of the training sessions, most of the sparring sessions felt like this. I think when we look at people doing epic things and we want to replicate that, we misinterpret this whole motivation piece. We misinterpret the action that they take with a good feeling all the time of like, oh, like we're just going for ice cream. Like every time I had to go home from work and then get in my car and drive down to the boxing gym, I was tired. I didn't want to go. I was hungry. I was probably, probably off the back of some bad training sessions where I wasn't feeling amazing. And like these were the reminders for me.
Yep.
Gone way off track from where I started with that little rant, didn't I?
No, but it's relevant.
Yeah. And I think, so the first thing I realized when I got in that boxing ring after a while was this persona. I talked about this persona. And it was the first time I feel like I met myself in the ring. I found this place, And I don't know how many places. I think you've really got to push yourself to the edge, the very, very, very edge of your comfort zone in an activity that requires a fight or flight response to actually get past. Like, I had this great rationalization of everything. I had the answers. I was independent. I was strong. This is the way it is. I can do anything. And I believed that. I believed that my whole life, 29 years, totally believed that. And then inside that boxing ring, something happens, and a behavior comes out, and a feeling comes out, and then you get to watch that and go, all right, there's no deciding or writing the script for that. Like, that just happens. And then you see who you are. And I found out pretty quickly. And then I started asking big questions like, well, hang on, why aren't I scared in here? Why aren't I scared of a punch in the face? What does scare me? And those were the questions that started to really unsettle me. And I guess boxing also being such a physical sport, in the beginning, it starts to shift emotions. Emotions sit in our body. And I had a childhood and an upbringing where I had stuffed down so far for so long because I thought if I just almost feel like I took my memories and put them in such a deep dark corner that they kind of didn't exist, and I knew they did, but they also didn't because I'd wiped them away. But with that, you start to wipe your emotional regular. Like, I didn't have emotions in the ring, and that's why I didn't get angry in the ring. That's why I didn't feel in the moment when I was in a state of fight or flight, and that happens in other environments. But it was interesting, and I didn't notice until a trainer once said to me, I said to him, we were doing some drill, and it was really hard, and it was really intense, and I was like, I am buggered. And he goes, real? Like, genuinely, he says, really? You don't even look like you're trying. And I was thinking about that afterwards, and I was like, you can see nothing on my face. I have poker face. People can't see what is happening with me. And also because I don't even respond, because I shut down the emotion. And if you shut down the emotion, well, no one can see it, can they? Because it's not there. And then I was realizing in other parts of my life that happens. An emotional reaction to something 3 days afterwards because it wasn't safe. It's not safe to feel emotions in the moment. And then after a period of time, and I feel like boxing being such a physical sport too, you're starting to shift those. Your physiology changes and all of the things. A huge few years of going, all right, we've got to dig out. And for me, that was childhood sexual abuse. And I found myself going for walks and thinking of running into this person. And I was like, it's odd that this 30, at 30 years old, why is this in my head? Which made me kind of go and Google it. Hey, if this happened as a kid, and then I started aligning these traits that I was seeing about myself, this independence, this strength, this avoidant personality type that I had. And I started seeing the alliance of what people that experience this in childhood and what can happen in adulthood. And I was like, all right, I got some work to do.
I think there's so much in what you said. I want to talk about that emotional stuff because I've just been through a journey myself. But that one thing you said is that you got in the ring and you start questioning things. And I think I strongly believe that the only way to have personal growth, well, apart from being scun like a rabbit, and I don't mean that in a nasty way, but like something just happens that it's just completely ripped you apart. But I think that if we don't stop and reflect and have enough self-awareness to stop and reflect, we can't grow, so, and a lot of people don't, they just keep pushing through and pushing through and pushing through. And for me, I've been like you, and hardly anyone believe this, but I am the level 4 introvert. So I'm the most extreme introvert. No one will believe it because I've been on stage since I was 15 and I've got all the magical switches, to turn on and everything else. but I was the same as you, and I only just learnt this. I didn't even know this, but I was pushing all my emotions down. Except, unlike you, I was showing emotions, but I'm not same with you. Not in the moment, pushing them down and then expressing it in an incorrect way. And since I've been an adult, like since I've been maybe in the last 20 years, I've been expressing well, but COVID has come along and all these other triggers like the bushfires and stuff that I've talked about many times on my podcast. So many things, it's triggered off a whole series of stuff that's happened. I say I had a great childhood, and nobody harmed me, but the way I've interpreted certain things has put these emotional triggers, emotional markers all through my life. And so now and everything was going great, I felt strong, I felt seen, I felt heard, I felt valued, I felt all those great things. But in the last 4 years, so many things have gone on. All these triggers have come back up, and I hadn't recognized it, but all I could say was I felt like shit, So I did this emotional timeline thing, and I could see clearly where all these markers were, and now that was only last week, so now I'm kind of like, okay, so where am I going from here? What am I going to do? It's a fascinating story, and epigenetics. I want you to talk about that. Actually, you talk about it first, and then I'm going to tell you my story on it, because and I have shared this before, but we'll share it while we're talking. But I find epigenetics something I never knew about, and once I heard about it, my mind was blown, because it unlocked something for me that changed my world, and I can't help but feel sadness for so many people out there who are locked in an epigenetic pattern, and they will never ever know it unless it comes up. So tell us about epigenetics, tell us what you do, because that stuff, it fascinates me.
Yeah, so I come across the PH360 epigenetics platform in 2020 when we were in lockdown, and I had one of the founders on my podcast.
Yep.
And immediately did the course, because when he spoke about everything that they can tell us and that we can know about ourselves when we know our epigenetic profile, I was like, no way. Like the first thing was, it was like, well, this makes perfect sense. And then I kind of went, why has the world taken this long to, like, we've been saying everyone's different for all of this time.
Yep.
And we've got the most amazing science in the world. It almost feels ridiculous that this hasn't been at our fingertips earlier. It's so basic and simple. Yep. But so I did the course and I become a coach. And even just the discovery, like you felt, of learning my profile and resonating with, like all of a sudden you have permission to be you. You have permission, because it's not just your body and the way you should eat and the way you should. It comes down to the way you should socialize, the way that you interact, the way that you express. And I was comparing myself to other people at times in business and chastising myself because I should be more like them. And I'm an activator, so testosterone and adrenaline driven, which really comes out not only in the way that I train and the way that I go at life, but, my behaviors and the way that I'll speak and the way that I'll take action. And, I use it a lot. I mean, as soon as you know that and you become really familiar with the traits, it comes into every conversation. All of us, you can communicate with people better. Yeah. You can understand. I can look at people and from visually seeing how they look and then also getting a sense of what's important to them and how they speak, and how they live, it's not hard to start pinpointing a little bit of, I think this way, and then you can communicate better, right? Because you understand that I don't need to talk to them like me, I need to talk to them like them. Like I'm presenting this information and they need that information.
Yeah. Like and the dog doesn't agree. Yes, or he's cheering for you. She's cheering.
I think someone just left a delivery at the door. She's an activator too.
Yeah.
Coach, stop it. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
It is incredible. I actually did a podcast with two of the so Cam McDonald's one of the PH360 guys, and he's got a lady called Anne Larson, and she is also a trauma therapist, and I talk a lot about trauma on my podcast. So I had this question, because when I first started, or just before I started podcasting, I was working with Ambulance Victoria paramedics, training them online while we were in lockdown. And I really connected with the idea of paramedics deeply because of my boxing ring experience. So I had this realization that I connected with the boxing ring on all of these subconscious levels. And when I stepped into the boxing ring, it felt like home. Why? Because it was a place of kind of danger. I was standing in front of an opponent. It put me in a state of like heightened awareness, and that felt familiar. That felt like home. And I went, okay, so something seemingly negative has brought me into this space to do this thing. I've been drawn in here. There's behaviors, there's reasons. And I questioned, why are paramedics drawn in? So paramedics have 4 times the suicide rate of other first responders. So my question was, and I did a podcast on this, is it the epigenetic makeup of someone who, is there a particular epigenetic type that goes into that caring role? And then what is it, that role that causes this knock-on effect that they're susceptible to? Or is it a trauma response that carries them into this experience? And then, so I just find that fascinating. You know, we have our biology, we have trauma, our personal trauma, we have epigenetic trauma, and I'm just fascinated by that whole space. And there's so many, I don't know, like answers and more questions than answers, definitely.
I'm fascinated too, and I have the same feeling as you. Is if this is out there, why are we not buddy accessing this kind of stuff? And all alternative healing, I don't care. You know, we've become so you know, many centuries ago, that was all they used. You know, that was their go-to. You know, and even the pyramids, you know, they say that they were built with and I believe this, you know, with there's holes in the roof, and they say that they put prisms in there, and they used to use light healing, you know, with prisms up in the, as the sun came through, shone on a prism, they would do color healing, you know, and that sort of stuff. And, you know, we make up this story about the pyramids. It was for burying mummies and shit like that. And we don't know, you know, but there's so many other stories that, and I think that we've lost, this is my opinion, and other people might not share it. And I do think we need the medical profession. Don't get me wrong, you know, and I've used them, you know, to save my life. But, I think that we're a holistic being, you know, and we're made of energy, and we're made of all these little things, and it's not just biology. You know, there's this all the energy and all the frequencies and the vibrations that go around us, and everything that we're carrying down. What one person, our perceptions, our interpretations, like this is it's a massive, big, holistic thing, and we're very quick to dismiss. Not all of us, but some very quick to dismiss any of this alternative stuff that actually makes up part of the jigsaw. And we should be embracing all of it, you know, and just saying, well, what is it in this moment that my body or my mind or my soul or, you know, my energy is looking for? Because the medical stuff, it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. I don't seem to be getting answers. So what else am I looking for? What's my heart looking for? What's my soul looking for? What's my energy looking for? And I just find this fascinating. You're talking about epigenetics slightly different to how I'm thinking about it, but it's still the same. It's carrying that energy, and it's, you know, it's how it presents in us and everything else. But with for me, you know, I was like having all this trouble with my value, and I couldn't understand it because I believed I was valuable, and I believed I brought value, and I knew I did, and I couldn't figure this bloody conflict. And I ended up seeing this kinesiologist, hypnotherapist, epigenetic person in America, and she's just bloody wonderful. She said to me, "So what's the first thing you're thinking of?" I'm a bit hypnotized, and I'm like, because it was about money and value, and I'm like, oh, I'm thinking about my mum's sister. And I said, I must be so off track. I can't, it's not even relevant. Keep going. She said, keep going. And as it turns out, I mean, long story short, my mum had a little sister who died from a heart, hole in her heart. And mum went off to work in the city. And when she came back one weekend, she came back every weekend to bringing Margaret back a little toy. One weekend she come back and she wasn't there, and her mother said, she said, where's Margaret? She said, she's dead. She doesn't exist. It was that kind of thing. And she said, well, what about a funeral? You're not going to the funeral. You're not old enough. And so Mum, when she was like 17, 18, developed this absolute belief. I don't bring any value to the conversation. No. Now she's gone and had me 4 years later, and I've carried this freaking energetic belief all through my goddamn life that I believe that other people believe I don't bring value to the table. And yet that was conflicting with me, because I do bring value. So why am I caught in this? And I could never, in a million years, without help, I could never have ever have joined those dots. It's amazing.
100%. Thank you for sharing that. I think the same. I find that until we speak to people and hear ourselves speak, what I think I believe,
yep,
it comes out different. Your body tells you when you say it, right? So I can say it in my head and my body won't respond. We can, like, I think money is such a telltale of our self-worth, because it's direct. It's directly, it's our value, and I'm always intrigued by that. How hard it is it for me to make money, and why do I make it so hard? And in my recent, like, I had a author on that has, so it became a therapy session, and then I had him back on, and so I did a live therapy session, and then I said to this guy, I want you to be my therapist, because he was amazing, right? And then I went into that, and the first thing I said to him in our therapy session was, I'm coming into this pretending it's a podcast, because like the metaphor of the boxing ring, I access a level of communicating and openness that I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing. But when somebody like that asks, I never realized the shame that I was lugging around with me all the time until you have these conversations. And like, so it's funny we process things cognitively. Like, I'm a cognitive ninja. Like, I've I've got the answers to everything. Like, there's answers there, and there's certainty, and I've justified them, and they make sense, and I feel good. They make me feel good. So my brain's ready to tell any story that makes my body feel good.
Yeah.
But it's not the truth, because sometimes you drop your guard, you have a conversation, someone asks a question, and you go, what is that heavy, thick, oh my God, I feel shame. Where is that? And what is that about?
Yeah.
And it's big, and it's in our bodies, and it's, I spent a lot of years as well saying I had an amazing childhood, had a great childhood, loved my parents, they're wonderful, and I knew this thing had happened. But when I started to kind of dig into it and look at it, I was like, I was 5, maybe 6 when that started. And I look at my personality type and avoidant personality types. I was like, this doesn't make sense. All of that, the fundamentals of your personality type and your attachment style happen way younger. So I knew that the problem wasn't the abuse. The abuse was a side effect. That had happened because I'd been in this environment, and that was just a byproduct of that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, this is a product of the before years, okay? So I was missing things. And my brother, 7 years older, grew up in the same environment, but he was so much older we moved into a shop when I was 3 years old. This Christmas, my mum came over here for a holiday, and she was talking about that, and she said, I found out this year that my brother had said, I hate living here. It's all right for me. I just wish Tiff would get a fair go, because I was so young, and it was a 7-day-a-week shop that we lived in. And, there was a lack of attention. And then Mum telling me how much she used to, like, she'd yearned for this little baby girl. And she used to get me out of bed and take her to her bed, and we'd cuddle in the mornings. And then they bought the shop, and that didn't happen because she had to get up and go to work. So when I think of my childhood, I think of an only child. I don't feel like I have a brother because he was 7 years older. But I also, my memories are of a dark, empty house. Like, there's no one there. I cannot recall an actual memory of a warm hug or an open conversation. We didn't talk about feelings. We're not that kind of family. Not a bad family, just people that parents that also didn't have that upbringing
Yeah.
that cultivated that. So it was hard, and it was like I always kind of knew that I struggled in relationships, but then I'd look at my parents and go, they've been divorced a long time and they've got a great relationship together, but they're still single, and I'm like, this is not going to be easy for me to get to the bottom of. There's a lot here that's not just, oh, I was abused. Yep, there's that, but that's layered on something way more complex.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. I'm still working that out.
But I think that's the key, isn't it? That you're still working it out. And I think that this is the difference, where I don't think we ever work it out. Like, I honestly think that life's a journey, and we're always uncovering stuff, and we're always, improving little. I always say my whole mantra is just chipping away, because it's like, because but I think the key is in whether you keep questioning, and whether you keep growing. And it's not questioning to say, I'm shit, I'm not good enough, what's wrong with me? I don't mean that kind of questioning, but the questioning about what could that mean? How could that relate? How could I become, and I don't mean a better person. I'm going to say a better person, but I'm not meaning like a better, like more successful person. But how can I feel better? How can I be more calm? How can I be more content? How can I be more at peace with myself? How can I understand who I am better so that I can move through life a little more seamlessly, without so much conflict? And I think that's the aim of every person, is to be happy and be peaceful. So that I think if we kind of trying to chip away at some of the pains, some of the conflict, just keep chipping it out. And we can never just go, oh, I've been to see one therapist, that was fantastic, now my whole life's solved, because that doesn't bloody happen. But the point is that some of us start the process and some of us don't. And I think that it's painful to start the process and to say, I thought my childhood was great, and maybe it wasn't. I'm carrying all this shame, as you say. And one thing that I noticed through all this emotional timeline that I did is that it is fucking plagued with guilt. And I wasn't the guilty person. I just took on the guilt because I believed that might have been my fault. That might have been my fault. Oh, I should have done better. I could have done better. Why didn't I do this instead? So that this guilt pattern has been going the whole bloody time. And now that I'm aware of it, and see, we're not bad people. We just don't know these things, And now that I've seen this guilt pattern, I'm like, whoa, now I see it. I can do something with it. But until we see it, until we start asking those questions like you're talking about, like, why is this? What's that? And trying to join dots until it comes to the surface and it actually comes out of our mouth. Like you said before, I think that's such an important thing. We have to say things out loud. We have to, or it never, ever becomes reality. And I think that you start to say, whoa, I never saw this before. Okay, I have the courage to address it, or to question it, or to look at it. And then suddenly you go, well, for me, I've gone, fuck that. I'm not carrying that. I'm not carrying that. That was not my fault. I'm not bloody carrying that. And so I'm chipping back through this timeline going, wait a second. No, there's no fucking way I'm taking that. That's not my guilt. And as I'm doing this, it's opening up other questions and other questions and other questions, but you can't address it until it's on the table. And I feel so sad when I see other people who are completely in a suppressive state, that or repressed state. I'm not dealing with that. I'm perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with me. Don't ask me that. I'm fine. I'm fine. And every time people say I'm fine, that's an obvious indicator that this is a tablecloth that's sitting over the table, that it's got all the cards under the tablecloth, but we're just not prepared to take it off and have a look. I'm with you. I find this stuff mind-blowingly fascinating, and my mission in life is to unlock the magnificence in every person I can, and that includes me. That includes that I'm part of this equation, and I think that every single person is born perfectly, absolutely perfect and magnificent. I've got this theory, you're going to love this, is that we're born with this beautiful diamond here in our throat. I'm just pointing to my throat chakra and in between my throat and heart chakra. They're just under my sternum for anybody who's not watching, just above your heart. It's kind of like this big diamond. And I think that it's absolutely perfectly beautiful. And then we get told, it's kind of like it's amplified. This diamond's glowing. Oh, she's talking. Say mummy, say daddy. Oh, she's walking. We get all this praise. And all the relatives gather around the cot. Look at the new baby. Everyone wants to cuddle you. Our diamond's glowing like goddamn. We think we're the queen's jewels. And then suddenly it's kind of like we start to walk, and we touch the TV, smack on the hand. Don't touch. Stop. Wait. And then we've got this whole world of no, sit down. So we've been praised for standing up, and now we're getting told, sit down. Don't talk, don't speak. And then we get to school, and it's like, no, it's not your turn. Be quiet. And then the kinder kid says, my mum says my mum doesn't like your mum, and my mum said not that, and all this sort of shit. We don't want to play with you today. We all experience it. We can pretend we didn't, but we all do, And every time we get this, it's kind of like this dirty, gunky shit, this murky shit going on our diamond. And eventually it becomes so covered up in muck, but we don't even know it's there anymore. And so now we're believing the story that I'm not good enough. I'm not worth anything. And unless we start scrubbing that diamond and recognizing it's there and say, no, wait a second, this isn't my shit. This isn't my gunk. I didn't put this on here. And it freaking takes courage. God damn, it takes courage.
Yeah.
To
you're
do
so
that.
right. You're so right. And I know that for me, and I'm sure there's so many people will agree, when I first became self-aware and realized, here's this, and that is the answer to these things that are happening. All right, so there's a reason for it. Now, I see now why some people get a diagnosis or a realization, and that becomes their anchor, because it can be a real tightrope that you walk and go, oh, I can't because I had this happen, so now I'm like this.
Yep.
There was a huge period of frustration. Self-awareness is the best thing in the world, but it's so hard because self-awareness isn't the change. It's just the beginning. It's just you see that first little bit of the diamond, and then you're like, there's so much work, and you can feel really stuck, and ignorance was bliss. Ignorance was bliss, because I thought I was the fucking champ before then, and I was just like, look at me, I'm going to move to Melbourne, I'm going to take over the world, I'm going to do a boxing fight, look how tough I am, look how much I can achieve. I wasn't achieving shit, but I thought I was. And then 10 years into therapy, I'm sitting in the therapist chair, and I burst into tears when I realised for the first time that all of this stuff, all of this bravado, everything I'd done since I left Tasmania was so that the people back there would love me, that I'd be worthy of love, and I'd show them that I was special. And all I'd caused was disconnection and a persona around the real me. So I'd done the opposite. And I was like, how can I do that for 10 years? How can I do the opposite for 10 years and end up further from the goal? And it's hard because we are doing these behaviors and we're making these choices. There's a part of us doing that. And then there's another part of us telling another story. But we kind of have to own that we are, like, I'm really into stories. Like, what I choose what I believe. And I ponder the story that I have around things, and I choose. So I look at science and I look at experience, and I look at all of the evidence in all different corners of the world, and then I choose the story that is going to have the best effect on making me take action or making me get to the next place. I think it's really important how we frame things and what meaning we give to them.
I do too, and I think that I often have this inner dialogue and outer dialogue, about are we self-determined or are we born with a blueprint, that has a stamp on it? And it's just, it's a fascination for me. Ultimately, I lean towards self-determination because I've done it so many times in my life. I want this, and therefore I'm changing things, and then I'm going to achieve this. But who knows? I don't know, but I love what you're saying. And we forget that we've got the power to take a pen and write our future. Like we actually have the power to do that, and
Yes.
we can't control all the outer things that are going to keep bombarding us. And we can't control COVID. We can't just say, well, I'm just going to write my reality that I'm just going to pretend it's not there. Like we can't do that sort of stuff. But we've got so much more potential and so much more power within us than we see we have. And when you're saying, about, you're talking about unpacking you, and I'm talking about unpacking me, and we're not exclusive to this world. It's not just you and me who have got this stuff. Like every single person has got a whole stack of stuff behind them, and sadly, what happens is that we use that as a benchmarking for what we can achieve in the future, but with last time I did this happened. And then they all, there's this whole big combination of compounding effects. And well, I've got evidence of that happening 20 times. And when you said people have a diagnosis and stuff, I had my thyroid out 5 years ago and I can't sing anymore. So I'm that person, that I can't sing anymore, but I try to, I tell that story because I don't want people putting me on the spot and asking me to do a gig that I simply can't do. Like I haven't got the capacity because I can only sing a song at a time. But I'm determined I will fucking sing again. I will bloody sing again. And so if it's only I can do one song at a time, then that's what I'm going to do, because I refuse to let this bloody ruin me. And it's actually taken away my voice. It's taken away my expression, the fact that I'm not singing anymore. So I've gone back into this shitville because I've lost my expressive voice. But the thing that's interesting is I've always said, and I didn't realize this, I've said when people piss me off, I said, I could just rip their fucking throat out. And it's been last week, it was really brought to my attention. Well, when you say shit like that, and this is really good for, the listeners to listen to, when you keep repeating things that have a biological edge to them, you be prepared that could happen. Because I got my throat ripped out, my entire throat gone, like my whole thyroid taken out. And I used to always say, I'll rip their fucking throat out, so.
Oh, see, as soon as you said that and mentioned singing, and I was like, here's someone here that is a podcaster and a coach and a singer, and you've lost that, and that representing the ability to speak.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, there is, like, what is the story in there? Like, what do we need to learn from that?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And I was singing for 40 years, or more, and it's gone. But the good thing is, and this is not, I'm not going, oh yeah, but we'll just press that aside. I'm not doing that. At least I can speak. I can podcast. I can speak on stage. I can do that. And when I never forget the surgeon saying to me just before the appointment, before he took it out, he said, I have to tell you though, you may never speak again. And I was like, what about sing? He said, you can forget that. You're never going to sing again. And I actually reckon I took that on and thought, well, I'm never going to sing again, and I was devastated. I was like, no, this is my life. This is my world.
Doctors infuriate me. I had an amazing man on by the name of Dr. Jeffrey Redigat. He's written a book called Cured. He studies spontaneous healing. He's a doctor of Harvard. He's a highly academic, and someone busted his nut for so many years on this spontaneous healing shit that he went and studied it. He came on my podcast and we talked about all of the, these miracle healings for people. And there's two quotes that I remember him saying, and one was, we need to stop letting doctors be the expert of us. It is ridiculous that we do. Now, that's a doctor saying that.
Yeah. And
the other thing that, and I think this is what I named the podcast, what is the message of this illness? So it was all, because I was questioning, like, well, what the body and the mind and how it all intersects. And then, I even asked about pets, because I'm like, okay, well, if our bodies are like a barometer of illness and it's a message from something in our mind or a story, I was like, what's happening? Like, my dog's got Addison's disease. And I was like, so what am I like? Am I projecting? Is what is the energy in this house, or what is the energy in me? Because like attracts like, and so I've got this dog for a reason. She's been amazing for me. She was a part of my relationship healing journey. It was I've got to learn to commit to something. I'm gonna get this dog, and it was a challenge. She turned 6 yesterday, but it was a challenge. And then she gets sick, and then you go, I have to see a reflection of this. I have to own something in this experience. Is there something that I'm not looking at? Is there something that I'm missing? But doctors can infuriate me at times. I think they are taught, and it's not that they're bad people. I think that they just so often taught into this narrow field, and they know it so well that the blinkers are on. The beauty thing about what you and I do is we get to talk to polar opposites and ask their opinion about things, and then we get to take on both. And I go like, the more I learned doing this podcast, the less I know.
That's
anyone that comes on and says that they have the answer, the more they think they have the answer, the less I have credibility for them, trust for them. Because I just think you're not open to, because none of us know. Because guess what? Everything that we're taught was made up once. It was all made up. Like, we weren't born with. I'm learning Spanish. I just started learning Spanish this week, and I'm like, who even made this up and made up these rules? And when did this even start? And when it started, how come there's thousands of languages? And who just decides to make a new one and make all the rules for it? Like, my mind goes down rabbit holes. But
I'm the same as you. I ask all those questions too. How many races are there? How many races of people are there? And where did they start? And who started the language? And why did they choose that word? And why would they choose that word? And I'm the same. I 100%. And I love that you're saying that people say that they know the answer. And I think that's utter bullshit. And I think, I do coach people and I work with people and everything else, but I don't claim that I'm the only one that has the answer. I have this piece of the puzzle. And I think that that's what we've got to be better at is understanding and appreciating and loving, really truly celebrating and loving that each of us has a piece of the puzzle. And we should focus on that piece, and we should make that piece better, and we should offer that piece to people, so that they can put that piece into their puzzle. And, I think that we're this amazing, beautiful, interconnected web, and we've all got our little bits. And if we were just more generous and caring and loving, and we invested in the world with love, all these little bits start to get put together and people become whole again. They start to become whole, but we've really, really instilled fear into the world, and that we're siloed and that we're apart from everybody. And you don't understand me because I've got this thing that you just couldn't understand. And, I don't want to talk about my past because I'm the only one who's ever been there. You've never been there. You'll never understand. When we change that narrative and appreciate when we truly love each other and truly love the energy of the world, and that includes animals and the planet, that includes the whole interconnectedness, I think everything changes, and I think we've got a long way to go, but I'm working towards that. And I'm going to do, at the end of the day, when I leave this planet, I know that my whole thing was working towards, leaving a better footprint, leaving the world a little more connected. And it's such an important thing. It doesn't take much. It takes a bit of courage, takes a bit of vulnerability and humility, but it's worth it.
Teeny tiny things every day. Like, I remember sitting when COVID hit, I remember walking over to the park, sitting in the grass and filming a live video on Facebook, having a chat. And what grabbed me about this experience in this moment was I'd worked on mindset for years. I'd worked on how I wanted my mind to think, and all of a sudden this thing happens and my mind did it automatically. Like, I was like, wow, now that's my natural default. So what I saw and what I remember talking about was how we wake up one day and overnight the most ridiculous scenarios unfolded. There's this global pandemic. We're locked down. My business is shut down. It was just chaos. And my mind goes, oh, this is also proof that any day, any given day, I could wake up and something absolutely unforeseen could happen in the opposite direction. Amazing. amazing, right? So it was like, this is actually hope. But everyone's running around seeing the fear and the uncertainty and all of the negative. And I was like, but this also means that there's a flip side to this. That's proof. This is proof that there's hope.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yep. What's possible on that other side of that bridge? It's just, Tiff, I've loved this conversation. Tell us about, because we're going to run out of time. Tell us about your podcast, because I just love the sound of it. Love it.
Oh, well, I'm actually going to have you on it if you'll come on it, because I've loved this chat as well, and I'd like to talk to you more, because
I would love to.
You're awesome. You've got great energy. But
Thank you.
yeah, so I started it in June 2020 because of the pandemic. I had 2 gyms. They were shut down. All I wanted out of it was to improve my communication and speaking skills by speaking to great people and hosting conversations and networking at a high level. I've now done almost, I think today's episode was 297 or 98.
Wow.
Yeah, so I do 4 episodes a week. I have learned and evolved. I'm literally a different person, living in a different world. Had the most amazing guest people that have been through. So Jill Hicks, it's been, in the London bombings. I've had John DeMartini. I've had, just really special people. And even just, people, friends of mine that have been through, courageous stuff. People sharing their stories for the first time. If it wasn't for the podcast, I never would have. I won't say never, but that was the first time. It was only a year ago when I publicly spoke about my childhood experience.
Yeah.
And I remember that the first time of just simply mentioning it accidentally on a riffing podcast with a friend of mine where we were just bantering, and he wheels back and asks the question. It felt like a year it took him to get through the question. I was like, oh. Because it was on his podcast, and he's got thousands and thousands of listeners with a huge podcast. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I just said it. And I remember for 2 or 3 days afterwards feeling like I felt like I'd already, because I've been doing therapy on this for years, I felt like I'd already got it out. But I remember thinking, wow, there's a weight that I didn't even know was on my shoulders. It's gone now. And that was before even really opening up. Yeah, it's been so an amazing experience. I just love it. And so and the ability for, like your show, people to come along for the ride. And that you're changing, you're allowing people, I'm not changing anything, but I'm allowing them to access things that are going to change their life.
Yeah. 100% I agree. And I don't want to do my podcast either like you. I don't want to be an expert. I just want to bring conversation to people where they start to go, and have a second thought, for growth. I love that. I'm absolutely going to come on your podcast. You're bloody booming. 297 shit. I think I started in 220, and I'm up to, I don't know, just tapped over 100. So, I'm only doing it once a week, but it's I've found doing a podcast the most amazing. It makes you show up. It's something that gets you to show up all the time. And the conversations I'm having, the people I've met, and I would say that I've got a great relationship with everyone I've had on my podcast, because it's just it's the sharing of the space, and it's they get to know great people. Now I've got to know you, Tiff. Now you're in my network.
Now we're mates.
So we're mates. That's how fantastic. I just love it. Now I always end my podcast with a get off the bench question, and I need to read this because I really wrote down. No, I don't know why I'm reading it. What a bloody joke. How many bloody podcasts have
You've
I
done
done?
100 bloody podcasts. You're not reading anything.
I know me bloody question, for Christ's sake. So look, anybody who gets off the bench is going to metaphorically get punched in the face. Like that's gonna happen. And we talked about that earlier. What's your advice to push through despite that pain? Because it feels painful. It hurts.
I love this question. I was driving to an event on the weekend, and I was thinking about some of my messages, and this came to my mind. I was a terrible boxer until the bell rung and I was in the fight, and then I won. No amount of preparation was ever going to make me feel ready. You're never ready. I walked into the fight feeling like a loser. I do it every time when I rock up in front of a microphone, in front of some of the biggest names in the world in what they do, and I still feel like a loser, and then I win the fight one podcast at a time, one fight at a time, one experience at a time. So you're ready now. Get off the bench. You're ready now.
Yep. Wow. Oh, I love it. I love it. I get the same with me. I was in a band, and we had a female singer, and she pulled out the night before a gig, and we're only 15. And the boys said to me, "You'll have to sing." Why do I have to sing? Well, you're a girl. And I'm like, Jesus, that doesn't mean I can sing. And we played at a pub, and I remember Dad driving us, and with all our gear, and we played at this pub, and I sang, and I was bloody awful.
Wow.
Awful. And I was shitting my pants, and I don't even know, they were throwing money at us, and I think it wasn't to say you're great, it was to shut up. I was to shut up.
But it's like what you say to yourself doesn't matter when it's coming from that inner critic side, like that. You'll always have that. There's no getting good enough for that to be left behind. That's always there. It's followed me wherever I go. It's never going away. Be friends with it. Thanks for telling me. You keep me humble. Good. You keep me working hard.
Yep.
Like, you would have been amazing. You'd have been the only person. You'd have been the only person thinking that you're terrible.
It was fucking terrible. And but I'm telling you, I kept doing it. And then I became great. And I think that's you keep showing up. Showing up. And I love that. Love that advice. And 100% just keep showing up. Do the bloody thing. Push through the fear, take action, and keep showing up. And you eventually you make it. I love it. Now, Tiff, this has been the best conversation ever. This has just been fantastic. I've loved it. And I love it to be so raw, so vulnerable, so real. And that's the stuff I like. I really like that stuff. And I think everyone needs to hear that. People are going to want to follow you. People are going to want to come and listen to you. And I hope they do, because they're going to have to go and listen to you to listen to me.
Well, exactly. They're going to hear you on the show soon.
No, but I mean, they're going to have to come to your podcast to listen to me talk on your podcast. But this is fantastic. I want people to follow you. I want people to go and check out what you're doing. So where can they find you?
They can find me in all the usual places. Roll with the Punches podcast has an Instagram and a Facebook page, or Tiffanee Cook, Tiffanee with a double E, so I'm not like the jewelry, but I am just as precious. And rollwiththepunches.com.au, you'll find it all there.
But I'll put all those links in the show notes, and I want people to go and check out, because, there are people who can be like, oh, yeah, I'm the best. This is what I do. And then there's other people say, you know what, I'm doing my best. I'm making a difference. Sometimes I struggle too, but I'm doing my best, and it's changing the world. And that's so special. So that's you, Tiff. That really is. I love it.
Thank you so much. I've really loved this chat. So thank you so much.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Well, I look forward to being on your podcast, and I look forward to staying in touch. Thank you so much.
Boom.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.